Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening for our next installment of the Tell Me More Talks with Conservation Minnesota online event series. We're excited that you're here with us, and we look forward to chatting with our panel tonight about the health benefits of being outdoors. My name is Jessica Ayers-Bean, and I'm VP of Development at Serve Minnesota, our state's Commission for National Service. We partner with organizations to place over 2,000 AmeriCorps members in service opportunities across Minnesota, addressing pressing environmental, education, and health issues. I'm proud to serve as a board member for Conservation Minnesota, and I'm thrilled to join tonight's discussion on a topic that I am passionate about. Spending time outdoors, whether biking around the lakes of Minneapolis or hiking at Afton State Park, is so important for my physical and mental health. And I believe everyone should have access to those health benefits. Prior to Serve Minnesota, I worked at Campfire Minnesota for 14 years, a nonprofit working to connect young people to nature. I saw firsthand how powerful it was for youth to swim in a lake for the first time, or see the stars in the night sky at overnight camp. Connecting with nature is vital for our community's well-being. For those of you who may not be familiar with Conservation Minnesota, we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose mission is to protect the Minnesota you love by solving some of our state's most important environmental problems. We are committed to protecting people and places from the adverse impacts of pollution and climate change, while ensuring that everyone who calls Minnesota home has access to the great outdoors and opportunities to enjoy it. Our work is centered around bringing people together across regions, backgrounds, and beliefs to find real solutions. Tonight, we've assembled a panel that will talk about the health benefits that people experience when they spend time outside. We'll talk about the data and research and what it shows. We'll highlight firsthand experiences and explore a future where everyone has access to the outdoors. Before we move into our panel discussion, I'd first like to take a moment to introduce our moderator for this evening. Avery Hildebrand is the Public Engagement Program Manager at Conservation Minnesota. Avery works to build and expand key issue coalitions, manages our local government programs like the Blazing Star Award and the Environment Commission's Conference, and manages our Tell Me More online event series, among other things. Avery's favorite outdoor place in Minnesota beside his own yard is the picnic area at Gooseberry Falls State Park. Avery, please tell me more about who we have with us tonight.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Jessica, I got to ask you, what's your favorite outdoor place in Minnesota?
Yes, I'm glad you posed this question ahead of time because it's hard. It's a hard decision, but I would have to say that it's the North Shore for me. We have a cabin in Lutsen that we return to most years, and it truly is the best.
I agree. I agree. Part of the reason why Gooseberry Falls picnic area is my favorite is because it's very close to home, and I can just pop over there any minute, and no one knows about it. So it's always very quiet. I probably shouldn't have said anything. So thank you all again for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jessica. Folks, please don't forget to drop questions that you might have for us and our panel here tonight in the Q&A chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And just know that all panelists will be able to see your question, and we will get to them if there's some time at the end of the evening. And I'm excited to introduce our panel. So we have some really great folks here with us tonight. And first up, I'd like to introduce Jodee Lund. Jodee is the director of Glacial Hills Elementary School, where she wears many hats as the only administrator of a small rural school in Starbuck, Minnesota. Jodee has, and I did find out that's near Alexandria. So I tried to look it up, and you can't find Starbucks because Starbucks comes up. Jodee has received her master's degree in the science of curriculum and instruction. Jodee has spent much of her 15 years in education developing lessons, systems, in a school that places students at the center of their learning and provides them with meaningful real-world experiences. Jodee and her husband Nate, who's here tonight, also have 3 children together and enjoy spending time on their boat, doing some traveling, hiking, and camping. Welcome, Jodee. And as mentioned, Nate is also here. I think they're on the same screen, and Nate is currently in his 5th year teaching at Glacial Hills Elementary. In Nate's 13 years of teaching, he has taught both 6th and 7th grade math, K through 5 science, and all subjects in the 5th grade. Nate received his master's degree in the science of teaching, learning, and leadership in 2013, and he specializes in cognitively guided instruction and project-based learning. He uses a variety of tools and resources and real-world experiences to support this holistic approach to teaching and learning. Nate and Jodee, got to ask, what's your favorite place, an outdoor place in Minnesota?
You go.
All right. My childhood favorite place in Minnesota is Whitewater State Park. No mosquitoes, the bluffs, the rivers, fishing, hiking. It kind of has it all. So that's my favorite spot in Minnesota.
And I'm Nate. Thanks, Avery, for having us. I love fishing. I love everything outdoors. So whenever I'm out on a boat in the water, especially away from the crowd, just in some different remote rivers or lakes, just being on the water is kind of my place of peace.
Awesome. Yeah, Whitewater is a gem. I've been there once. I would love to go again because there's a few mosquitoes up here. So. Also, we also have with us tonight Erika Rivers. Erika is the executive director of Wilderness Inquiry. And just thank you for being here. And Wilderness Inquiry, if you're not familiar, is a national nonprofit organization headquartered here in Minnesota that serves more than 400,000 participants in day programs, near nature overnight experiences, and extended adventures. Wilderness Inquiry's mission is to connect people of all ages, backgrounds, and identities and abilities through shared outdoor adventures so that all people can equitably experience the benefits of time spent in nature, which we'll talk a lot more about tonight. And in Erika's leadership role, she oversees $8 million annual budget and a staff of about 90 to 100 full-time and seasonal employees. And prior to joining Wilderness Inquiry, Erika capped off a 2-decade career as a conservation biologist by serving as a director of the Parks and Trails Division at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Rivers also holds a PhD in conservation biology and a BA in journalism and Russian studies. That's really interesting. But I don't think we'll be able to dive into that tonight. Both from the University of Minnesota. Erika, I must ask, what's your favorite outdoor spot in Minnesota?
Well, thanks for asking, Avery. I'm just very heartened that 2 state parks have just been mentioned as favorite places. That's wonderful. As an occupational hazard in my former career, I would only say that my favorite place was either the last park I was at or the next one I was going to, because I couldn't choose my favorites. But these days, I would say my favorite place in Minnesota is actually the Goose Lake hiking and skiing trails in the Chippewa National Forest. We bought a cabin up there, and we've been spending lots of time there since the pandemic. So that's my new favorite spot in Minnesota.
Awesome. Said I'm not familiar, but I'm sure it's beautiful. Last and certainly not least, we have Sarah Stevens with us. Sarah is a nurse manager working in local public health here in Southeast Minnesota. Her background includes working as a hospital-based nurse in the areas of orthopedic trauma and hyperbaric medicine, and as a public health nurse home visitor. And Sarah has found her passion in public health and loves that she can connect and advocate for health from both the individual level all the way up to the community level. And Sarah has her Doctor of Practice in Nursing in Health Innovation and Leadership from the University of Minnesota. Sarah has a passion for mentoring and leading others and spreads love for public health through her involvement with local, regional, state organizations and boards like Conservation Minnesota. Sarah lives with her family in Southeast Minnesota where they engage in all kinds of outdoor activities, including Nordic skiing and swimming, among many others. Sarah, what is your favorite outdoor place in Minnesota?
Oh, it's such a hard question, but I was so excited to hear Jody's answer, and that's going to be mine as well, Whitewater State Park. So I don't live too far away, and there's a specific part. There's a trail called the Dakota Trail, and there's this beautiful, like, kind of tucked away overlook in there, and that's where my husband and I got married, and so it's always holds a very special place in my heart when we hike in that area. So that's my favorite spot.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a great spot for it. I've been up on a couple of those bluffs. It's a good spot to get married. All right. Well, folks watching, please feel free. Put your questions in the chat for us. We will definitely get to them if there's time at the end. Yeah, so without any introductions are done, our favorite places are mentioned. Erika, I'm going to start with you tonight. So we've talked a lot about in preparing for this this online event is the research and data that is showing increasingly showing how beneficial being outdoors is for both our physical and mental health. And so I'm just kind of curious, what can you tell me about the data and research that you rely on to help inform your work? Because I know there's many different studies coming out right now, kind of telling us how good this is for us.
Yeah, Avery, there really are so many things that are coming out right now. I would say in the last 18 months or so, I've been particularly interested in this research around nature dosing. Actually, and this is that premise that different amounts of time, kinds of activity, and actually the types of natural areas that you're spending time in has differential impacts on human health and wellness. So there is this growing body of evidence, empirical evidence, that there are some minimum exposure levels, and that's generally understood to be about 2 hours per week, that result in significantly higher benefits for both mental and physical health. And they measure that mental health really in that it's called POMS, or profile of mood states. And then in particular, lots of research right now on cardiovascular health and health wellness impacts of nature there. So there's also a lot more extended evidence right now, or empirical evidence on extended and multi-day exposures to the outdoors, and in particular time spent overnight, interestingly, having significant health and wellness benefits than the smaller kind of repeated experiences do too. So here at Wilderness Inquiry, we're looking a lot right now. We work a lot in youth populations. And we're increasingly focused on developing social emotional learning skills, and how 5 core SEL competencies, that's like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, let's see, relationship skills, and then responsible decision making. Those are the 5 core competencies. And we're really looking at how youth that are on our day programs, our extended and multi-day programs, are seeing increased competency in those social emotional skills. And what's important about that is when you have increased competencies in social emotional skills, you are more likely to have academic success, mental well-being, and just overall life success as well. So we've been doing a lot of assessment on that over the course of the last 2 years, that social emotional learning competency. And so we know that our programs are having positive influence in increasing social emotional learning skills with outdoor exposures, more so than similar exposures in a classroom. So that data is really strong, and we're in the 90th percentile for those programs across the nation. So that's what we're really paying attention to. We'd like to do more research on the smaller impacts of shorter duration outdoor experiences as well, especially in the youth populations. But that's what we're paying a lot of attention to right now and really intrigued by.
Interesting. Just reminds me of the studies that show that preschool is so beneficial for the future and for development. That's great to hear. Erika, so you obviously work in an area where you are kind of like experiencing people's first times, like truly in nature, or maybe even first time just really getting out of their comfort zones. So, like, do you have any just great stories of where you've seen this just kind of happening in real time?
Yeah, the hard thing for me is just really picking one, but so just a Minnesota-based one that was really cool. A couple of years ago, we're up in Coleraine, Minnesota, on Trout Lake, and so I always like want to just express the importance that this isn't just an urban youth issue of not having enough exposure to the outdoors. It's actually youth from all places. So Coleraine, Minnesota is just outside of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. We were out there a couple years ago, a couple summers ago, about this time, with a classroom of 4th graders. It was a summer school program. And this young man got in the boat in front of me. I was with a legislator just showing him how we were doing our programs. And this little guy just grabbed the gunnel of one of our big 10-person canoes and just wouldn't let go, just terrified, very anxious. Our outdoor leaders, who are somewhat near peers, they're only 10 years or so older than a lot of the kids that we serve, was really just having some calming words, and they got really focused on how you paddle a boat. And it was within that 40-minute experience that this young man really changed from somebody who was really thinking about getting out of the boat by the dock, but really stayed in the boat. And within 40 minutes was really paddling that boat in unison with all the other paddlers in that boat. And the chaperone that was sitting in front of him that was sort of trying to calm him down early in that experience just kind of turned to him at the very end and said, "Hey, you really were not into this when we started. How are you feeling now?" And this kid goes, "I feel great. I feel so awesome right now. I really didn't think that I could do that, and I did." And I think that's what's really important about exposing kids and getting them a little outside their comfort zone in the natural world is they really realize at some very fundamental level that they've been telling themselves stories about what they can and can't do in life. And then having these exposures and this openness to having these experiences in the outdoors really does change their perspective, not just on the natural world, but about themselves as well.
I can relate to that. I think I remember very similar experiences when being pushed out of my comfort zone as a child, and now I work for conservation nonprofits. It's something. Thank you, Erica. That's really great to hear. It must be amazing to see that every day.
It's amazing to be part of it every single day. It sure is.
And I might ask you for another story in a bit. So it might not just be one. We are going to switch gears just a little bit, Sarah. I want to switch to you. We are talking kind of again about the data and what we're seeing, the benefits for people, and really curious. Obviously, as a nurse health manager working in the public health sector, like what are you seeing? So a recent study I saw said that even viewing nature can lower our perceptions of pain. So I'm just really curious, like what, from your perspective, what other physical, mental health benefits are being talked about in healthcare in your field? Yeah, anything you could share with us on that would be great.
Happy to. There's so much out there. I'm going to focus a little bit more on pregnancy to or like the young children, like up to age 3 to 5. And so we know that being in nature or being outdoors, when kids kind of have this exposure, they're obviously going to be more physically active, which is going to help set them up for healthy habits in the future. Being outside also increases your vitamin D exposure, which supports robust immune function and mental health. And then I think really importantly, and this really sets the stage for, like going to school later, is that being outside, it helps kids regulate their cortisol levels, which helps regulate their stress response. And so if you can do that, or you have, you're set up for kind of success that way, you're going to have an increased attention span. You're going to, again, have this ability to regulate your emotions in a more positive way. You're going to have more increased positive emotions, which if, when you have these kind of building blocks, it leads to, higher self-confidence, higher self-esteem, which again directly influences how kids kind of do in school. And then again, being exposed to greenery outside, it really does change how the brain develops. And we know like those first couple years are so critical for healthy brain development. And so again, set you up for, memory, learning, again, doing better in school. And again, even just something as simple as just playing outdoors in the dirt, and like you're getting exposed to these organisms that really help kind of this immune function. And so there's a lot of really neat studies out there right now and a lot of benefits for everybody, but especially young children.
That's great to hear. I do wonder. So, big far out question here. Feel free to take your best guess at it. But I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on how these insights will help inform medicine in the future? For instance, like, do you think we'll ever see doctors like give a prescription for medication and then require time outside, or how would something like that ever happen?
I mean, it's already happening, which is really exciting. So there's a movement, a national movement called Park RX America. And so our Southeast Minnesota region is part of that collaborative. And so it's connecting healthcare providers, it's connecting community organizations, parks, to try to incorporate outdoor activities into people's daily life. And so as a provider, you can write a prescription for, I mean, really, it's in conversation with the patient, but if they like to go to the park, you could say as a provider, I'm writing you a prescription to walk to the park 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And it really having that very kind of concrete goal is much easier for someone to kind of work through than just saying, you know, you need to like get more exercise, you know. So there's this movement to be very actionable as a provider. And so some of the other very interesting activities that the Southeast Minnesota Park RX Collaborative does is they have guided nature events, they do forest bathing events, mindfulness walks, they're part of this Walk for Docs campaign, which is, you know, you get to like take a walk with a healthcare professional and like, you know, learn how outdoor activity boosts health. So there already is a lot of great movement in prescribing nature for people. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Do you see that happening all over Minnesota? And is this really spreading across the country?
It's so okay, this is not I'm not like directly involved in this, but it is a national movement. There are a lot
Okay.
of different chapters. I don't know outside of like our Southeast Minnesota region. I'm sure there are. I know it's a very popular kind of collaborative to be a part of. So yes. So if another panelist knows, I mean, please feel free to jump in.
Sorry, and sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
It's clearly, I mean, again, the data is just showing us how beneficial this is. So I
Yeah,
really hope that that this is the future we're looking at, where you can get both
absolutely.
medicine and time in nature.
That's right.
Sarah, so you're also on the board of Conservation Minnesota,
I am.
and I'm really kind of curious, how do you view public health and environmental protection intersecting in your mind? Like, where do these things come together? If you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I think about this, I think kind of this very broadly about what's surrounding and shaping children in their environment. So it's, you know, for example, it could be the quality and the temperature of the air that they're breathing, you know, the purity, the availability of the water they're drinking, their ability to access safe and healthy housing or green space. I think you could add that on there. Their ability to access nutritious foods, the quality and density of the buildings in their neighborhoods. And so I think public health is really a big component of it is this idea of how can we change policy systems and in the environment to really promote health and well-being, and how do we do it in a way that it's easy to make a choice that's, you know, a healthy choice that supports your well-being. And so I think this well-being for all, this approach, this PSC approach is really kind of, in my mind, how that environmental protection and public health kind of intersect. There's a couple things that I know Conservation Minnesota has been part of or working on in regards to getting outdoors and health. One is the Outdoor School for All Act, and Conservation Minnesota supported that successful effort to fund the Outdoor School for All Act. So that's a statewide grant program that awards grants to improve access to overnight outdoor educational experiences for 4th to 12th graders. We definitely weren't like, you know, the lead on that effort, but we definitely amplified the efforts on that. And then also the Community Stewards Program, which is through Conservation Minnesota, and it just brought a lot of people together across the state that to not just protect and like steward the environment, but to enjoy and learn in nature as well. And so in different towns across the state, you know, there's stewards led different hands-on projects like clearing buckthorn or, you know, doing trail walks, doing kind of dark sky, like night sky, you know, viewing, light pollution, teaching students how to make their own pine cone bird feeders, etc. So Conservation Minnesota has a lot of great pull and weight here. So enjoy being part of the board as well.
Well, we're very happy to have you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to live up near Duluth here, and we had a couple of community stewards in Duluth, and got to see the great work they're doing. Monarch Buddies, which was this great pollinator network that they created, and you know, building bat houses and just really good quality projects. Sadly, the AmeriCorps program had experienced some federal cuts, so we're working on how we can possibly continue that program in the future. Um, yeah, well, thank you, Sarah. I think we're gonna switch. We have been talking quite a bit about kids, so I think it's natural to move to our educators here. Jodee, I'm really curious. So I see that environmental education and the farm to school program and an outdoor classroom are some of the pillars of Glacial Hills Elementary. And I'm really curious what inspired you to build learning experiences around the outdoors.
Yeah, so Glacial Hills is authorized by Osprey Wilds, and so we have environmental education standards, indicators that we aim to hit every year. And it just made sense to really approach this holistically. And so we really sat down when I came on about, well, now 5 years ago. We both came on 5 years ago, along with a lot of new teachers. I think with the COVID disruption, we had to hire about 11 of the 23 staff members here. Now we've grown to about 35 staff members, so we're growing, which is exciting. But we really needed to take a look and refocus our mission. They had a lot of great foundational work laid for environmental ed, but I felt like there was still room for growth and improvement. And there's a lot of farm to school money available at the time. And so I just decided to start there. And we were fortunate to receive quite a few large grants. Action for Healthy Kids, we received a national grant there. And the farm to school, the USDA one from the state of Minnesota. And then we just kind of started diving in. We got hydroponic gardens, so we started growing and doing schoolyard gardens as well. And it just like kind of like had this domino effect here. We started with that and wanting to improve our school meals. I mean, serving pancakes out of a plastic bag and grilled cheese. It was like, what are we doing? What are we feeding our children? And being in an environmental ed school, it didn't feel right. And so we started making changes there. And there's so much emphasis on social emotional learning, and then what being in environmental ed school, it goes hand in hand. Healthy bodies, healthy minds. So we just really started focusing on what programming we wanted to change to make sure that we were being intentional with environmental ed. Um, can you guys hear us?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
you
Yep.
just froze on our screen, so I was like, oh. Yeah, so we really we sat down with the teachers where it was a team approach, and we had a conversation of like, we need to recommit ourselves to environmental ed. What is this going to look like? And so we started developing. We have special programming on Fridays, farm to school initiatives. We have kitchen ambassadors, so we're even getting kids into the kitchen and growing and teaching like sustainable lifestyles for them and healthy lifestyles. So it's unfolded into a lot of facets, and it's been really amazing to see the work come together, and more people embrace the work that we do here. So it's been great.
Maybe just to jump in on this one too, because it ties in hand to hand. She's the brains behind it all, and then I just try to help make it happen. So we poll the kids quite a bit. I usually try to send out surveys, especially to our 3rd through 6th grade. We go through 6th grade, and I teach the upper elementary classes, and we just ask them, what do you guys want to do? What do you want to learn about? Because even when we started, not too that long ago. We just noticed that kids weren't getting outside. They were now like attracted more than ever to their phones or to video games. And it was just getting harder and harder to get kids to come to school and to like the school or want to read or want to do something. So then we're trying to find different books that tie into the outdoors. And so now what we're reading about applies to what we're seeing outside. And so trying to get that holistic child that Jodee is talking about is beneficial. And then as we poll them, we ask them, what do you guys want to learn about? Well, I want to learn about dragonflies and different types of insects. Great. Okay, let's take our bikes. Let's bike down the mile or so down to the marina. Let's scoop up some different types of insects. Now let's classify them. And then it's just like it just unfolds, and you don't have to be an expert in anything. You just have to listen to kids and what do you got to expose them to different things, but then see what they actually want too.
That's awesome. Is that kind of more the outdoor classroom? It's just kind of like impromptu outdoor experiences, or is there like actually like you spend all
No.
day outside?
So this was really cool. So we decided, it started actually with an idea with my preschool teacher, and she's like, I really want an outdoor classroom. And she kind of shared this example, and it was actually from a neighboring school district. Shout out to Morris area schools. And we looked at it, and I'm like, what if we had kids design an outdoor learning center, like an outdoor classroom? and it just blossomed. It actually like, and now we're developing 11 plus acres in our backyard that was gifted to us, land access from another community member. And the kids literally, they learned, we had surveyors and engineers here, and they taught the kids how to stake out land. And then how like landmarks and trees and different things like that are great indicators of like where to find landmarks, or the markers underground for surveyors. They learned how to pace. And then they created blueprints and designs of what they would love to see in an outdoor learning center. So they had to create these design proposals and present it to the entire school, 3rd through 6th graders. And then we voted on the elements we wanted to bring to life in the outdoor classroom. And so last year, kids literally, we were like, they were hauling riprap and laying down class 5 gravel and like paths, and they've been planting. And so we did this fenced in area out back. We have a hammock hotel. So we actually have 14 hammocks out back. And so that was kind of phase 1 of the Outdoor Learning Center. And now we just received $130,000 from the Lottery Commission. So now that'll fund phase 2 of our Outdoor Learning Center, where we'll integrate natural play-based equipment throughout the 11 plus acres. And then we're gonna mow some trails, and we restored native prairie grasses out back last spring. And so it's just kind of, again, like everything just kind of has unraveled into a much larger project, but it's been, the kids have been with us along the way. So they're really invested, not only students, but community members. Like they're giving back to their community, and this area is open up to the entire community after school hours. So it's pretty neat to see.
That's amazing. I like the hammock hotel. That's what. That's great.
That's all him.
Yeah, my class goes down there, and we have quite a few classes that go down there. We
Yeah.
check it out, and then yeah, we do our little read alouds out there, and then we'll identify different things, or we'll collect. Oh, okay, now we got a dragonfly. What kind of dragonfly is it? And then we bring it back, and then we kind of some of those impromptu moments that just kids love.
That's wonderful. It's yeah, not everyone has access to that. It's just so important. So thank you for doing that. You did mention the lottery funds, so I just want to quick shameless plug that Conservation Minnesota is a strong advocate of those funds. A little bit of lottery proceeds when you buy a lottery ticket in Minnesota goes to great places like Osprey Wilds and so many amazing projects in Minnesota. So it's really great to hear that that's happening and that it's doing good. So you had mentioned that anyone can access. It's your area's open for the community. Like, what are you hearing? Tell us some like, what are you hearing from parents? What are you hearing from the community? What's the reaction to this kind of non-traditional, I guess you'd say, schooling?
Yeah. We've been fortunate, really great recognition from the community, with a number of things like the farm to school initiative and the scratch cooking and the fresh produce that the kids eat here, and the kids even like sustainable living in the farm to school. The kids, like, we partnered with a farm this year, and we did a pig share. So the kids learned about 3 pigs, and they knew that their food scraps were going to go feed a pig. And now the pigs are currently being butchered, but then we'll have that produce to eat during the school year. And so the kids got to learn about, that as well, sustainable living, farming, ag education. So parents really love that. They're like, those are life skills. And I think too, because the parents are constantly competing with screen time and that instant gratification, it's harder and harder for kids to learn those things at home, I feel like. Or it's a bigger battle for parents to get those life lessons across to children. And so we get to provide families with those experiences, and so parents really love it. Anytime somebody tours our school, they're like, you guys teach life skills, and we're like, well, yeah, it just kind of comes natural. I mean, we definitely hit on all the same state standards, and our kids have to take the same tests as anybody else in the state of Minnesota, but just the way our teachers approach curriculum, they do a really great job of like embedding it into environmental ed. Our attendance is up, especially after COVID. Every school is battling like attendance and chronic absenteeism, and I feel like our attendance has gone up. Student confidence and Academic achievement has increased as well. Like our statewide testing demonstrates that too. So that's really fun to see. Do you want to share a little bit?
Like even just thinking of we had a community festival, dragon boat racing that happened over at Lake Minnewaska this past weekend, and ran into a bunch of families, and they're all like talking to the kids, and the families are, we're so ready to go back. And so that's fun. I mean, that's cool. I mean, being at a stage at one point in my career was like, man, I don't know, one more year, or let's see what's going on. It's like, I'm ready to go back. Like we just do so many different experiences with the kids, and then, you know, we're noticing that benefit of being outside and everything we do. So just providing as many holistic experiences outside is what really seems to click for kids. And then it clicks for teachers too, because it makes us feel better. We're happy, the kids are happy.
Absolutely. No, I hear that, and it's you guys are doing some great work out there. Really appreciate it. Nate, as a teacher, you our connection is that you were the youth leadership um, uh, liaison or point person, I guess, at your school for Conservation Crew, which is our youth leadership program. And I'm just kind of curious, what kinds of projects have the crews taken on, and how the kids feel about their projects.
Yeah, it's been an awesome experience. Jodee told me about it a couple years ago, so this was just my second year in doing it last year. It's been great. I mean, we started off right away the very first couple days, the first year at I think 8 kids or 7 kids, and then it grew to over 20 last year. And we even expanded, so we're just a school that kind of is a feeder school to our district school at Minnewaska. And I had half of my group, not even in our school, they wanted to come back to this experience because they heard good things, or they graduated from here and they wanted to keep coming back to kind of let's say like leave their mark on the community. So it's been great. Nature and community and getting experiences are like right up my alley. So Conservation Crew is all about that. We have a park on the other side of the school that's slightly run down. A lot of people love going to it. It's pretty great. But my kids are like, we walk out there and what do you guys want to do? And then the kids said, well, we'd like to really like revamp this park, do some different things. So we learned how to tile and some different things out there to pump some water in a different direction off the paths. They repacked down some of the paths, and then we built a 16-foot bridge that crossed over a big part of the tiling and allowed them to access half the park where a lot of people weren't able to access it before from the failing bridge. So yeah, I do a construction crew class like within my classes, and so a lot of them are exposed to some of that before. And then being able to find something in the community that's going to not only affect us or then those families, but finding other community members and asking what their input and what could we do to help them. You really cross that cross-generational, which I think is also really great for kids and regulating. And also great for the older people in our community. They know that kids care. They just want to be able to see that. So yeah, we've done some really cool ones this last year. We learned that it's a little bit trickier to go through different systems because we wanted to try to build this great wetland next to the park. And then we found out there's all these different engineering phases and everything that you have to go through. So it got derailed for a couple months. And then we did some fun bird houses and we put them out into our outdoor learning center. And yeah, did a lot of fun things with that towards the end of the year.
That's amazing. Great. A 16-foot bridge. That's incredible. Middle schoolers. That's wild.
Yeah, and a lot of them were, I think the youngest group we had was third or fourth. I had I had probably 3 or 4 fourth graders through 7th graders, and then last year we expanded to 8th grade. So yeah, a lot of little kids with impacts in their hands and a big smile on their face.
That's amazing. I really wish I had something like that when I was a kid. I had to do that myself. But I will say I've never built a 16-foot bridge. That's really incredible.
Thank you.
Just real quick, last thing, what's some advice you'd give other schools or educators who want to bring some of these aspects into their classroom, but just aren't sure where to begin?
Yeah.
That was a big one that we were kind of stumped on as we were kind of talking back and forth because it's hard even for us together. We live and breathe this, but then just getting other teachers on board or trying to just find the right fit with other teachers. the biggest thing that we do that within our school is just getting them comfortable, and just all you got to do is try. Like when I first started out, didn't have all these elaborate things. I wasn't doing it 100% of the time. Even now, it's, you're still dripping in. Okay, we're gonna read in the hammocks. Okay, now what? What do we do now? And then you just kind of build on from there, and just slowly, kind of step by step, get your feet wet, get comfortable, and just like do something that you feel good in first, and then try to bring in some of those things that you aren't as comfortable with.
And one thing, I used to be a tech integration specialist, and I feel like my main job was kind of taking the fear away, right? Like I would go in and I would team teach with teachers and teach them how to incorporate technology into their classrooms, but I was there as a safety net. And so find somebody that maybe like another teacher you could partner with, and do some things collaboratively. Even like we're small, but we start every morning together outside. We used to do it in the cafeteria, and then last year we moved it outside, as a way to kind of help kids regulate. We do a little bit of mindfulness out there. We do a fun nature fact, and have kids listen just to see what sounds they hear, and then they report back on it. But then every class has like a duty, a job that morning, and like, the lunch menu, the student of the day. So every class reports on something, but we do it outside. And that's just an easy way to start integrating some environmental ed, and nature into your daily routine. And you're doing it together. So I think that's a really good thing. I think too, for teachers, get your administrators on board. Like you need, anytime you want sustainable change, you gotta have everybody on board. You need it from the top down and the bottom up. Like um, yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. And I think too, for us, like we hire strategically. Like it's not always easy, but we let people know like this is what we're about, and we would love for you to add. You don't have to be an expert, but just being willing to try, that's all we're asking for. And I feel like we really have a great crew here, of teachers dedicated to living this out. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And one last thing is just resources are everywhere, and there's a
Yes.
bunch of free stuff. Egg in the Classroom, Jeffers Foundation. There's so many things out there just to start to look. That's kind of just where we began.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I was not familiar with Glacial Hills, so thank you so much. This is really wonderful to learn more about what y'all are doing. I want to shift a little bit. So we obviously, not everyone has a Glacial Hills Elementary School right next door. Erika, you touched on this earlier, that not everyone has access to quality outdoor spaces. So I think we would be really missing an important piece here if we don't talk about access, or lack thereof. So with so many benefits that we've talked about, many people don't have access, as I said, to places that can provide these benefits. Erika, what does outdoor access for all mean to you?
Yeah. Hey, first I just have to say, Nate and Jodee, I've just been enwrapped attention to everything you're talking about. And I'm just remembering back in exploratory physical science when I was a kid, and the biggest bridge I got to build was out of toothpicks, and it was maybe 16 inches long, not 16 feet. And so what an incredible opportunity for these youngsters to build a real bridge. I mean, that's amazing. And it, kind of does get to access, when you talk about the sort of big differences between folks who have access to the outdoors and those that don't. I do think I want to give a little shout out to my colleagues at the Minnesota DNR, because they have made some big investments this last year, with some administrative priorities for the Get Out More capital investment funding. So we can make more facilities across the whole state of Minnesota more accessible for more people in more locations. And so I think there has been some really great investments made, in particular in the last decade, of just trying to connect people to the outdoors in more meaningful ways. I think there's a lot more improvements recently in more sort of culturally competent communications, not only about access to the outdoors, but how you use the outdoors in responsible ways, leave no trace. What are sort of some of the rules of the game, especially when we saw such increased activities in the outdoors because of COVID. So I think there have been a lot of investments in really common sense things that help people understand the health and wellness benefits of being outdoors. Doing that in many more languages and multiculturally sensitive ways, where we are able to connect more people. I think there are also barriers, though, that we have a long way to go with. There are a lot of facilities that have been built in the state of Minnesota, for example, that are not accessible for those with physical challenges. And so we've still got a long way to go there, too. And then there's some cultural changes that are happening just with the population in the state of Minnesota. We are home to a lot of diaspora communities, and the last thing in the world, folks who have either personal or family connections with refugee camps, for example, last thing they want to do is go camp outdoors in a tent. And so I think there are other things, cultural barriers that we really need to be sensitive to and really be thinking about as we're trying to really be welcoming for all people to get into the outdoors in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I didn't even draw the connection between tent camping for someone who may be experiencing, being a what's the word I'm looking for? Just being displaced and what that might bring up for them. Thank you. Sarah, I know this is also important passion of yours, just ensuring that folks have access to the outdoors. What are some of the barriers that you're seeing for people that might not be able to access the outdoors, whether that's disability, geography, or financial situation?
Similar to Erica, and I loved Erica's answer. Thank you. Um, I think just really at a very individual local level, like a lot of families don't even have like, let's say a stroller to, take their child to the park. And that's just a very like local example. I mean, let alone, having a car or access to get to maybe Whitewater State Park or any other state park that's around you. So there definitely are, so they don't, there's no buses, they don't have the proper equipment. People, to Erica's point, don't often feel safe kind of outside. Um, like in like their own like neighborhood. So there's a lot of barriers to accessing nature in a way that, benefits our whole community. So absolutely.
No, those are good things to think about that I think a lot of us don't always realize. So it's
Yeah.
important to keep those things in mind. What's one thing, Sarah, that you could change to ensure more access for folks? If you could just flip a switch and make something happen, what would it be?
I mean, I would love everyone to be able to access, our parks, our county parks, our state parks, kind of the big outdoor space. But I think something that I would be love, like flip the switch if, all of our communities, could have green space kind of spread out in a way that everyone can access in a fairly easy way. So whether it's transportation or just, very walkable, I think that would be my flip the switch ask.
Perfect. Erica, how about you? Same question. Flip a switch. What
Flip a
changes?
switch. I think we clone Jodee and Nate and have more of these schools all over the state. No, I do think that what's really amazing about the model that they're doing there at Glacial Hills is that they're involving the whole community. And I think the flip the switch is invite some people outdoors with you. If we could just get more people inviting others to be part of our natural world, I think that we would be we would go a very, very long way in improving people's feeling of belonging and access to the outdoors. Just invite someone out with you.
It's a great answer. I want to get to a question here. I've seen this. I've been thinking about it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it up. Wasn't sure how, but today is a perfect day to talk about it, right? We are experiencing some some of the worst air quality in the world due to the Canadian wildfires, and we have a question here from Yumi. What would you recommend in order to keep lungs healthy amidst the smoke while outdoors? And then I also want to, I mean, from what we're seeing in the research is that the benefits of being outdoors, I mean, obviously if you're at risk, take care of yourself, be inside, wear a mask, do what you need to do, but like the benefits are substantial is what the research is showing. So, but yeah, if you have any advice on what folks can do to stay safe during the smoky days outside, feel free. Anyone can chime in. Sarah, looking at you.
I'm looking at Sarah. What do you
Oh,
got?
I don't have any other answers besides what you already said, Avery. I mean, wear a mask. If you obviously are part of a sensitive group, don't go outside if the air quality is, whatever the limit is for you. And it is hard though, because there are still a lot of benefits. So I wish I had a better answer, but there's not there's not a great one, I don't think. So
I have seen folks running in masks. I think that's a great thing. And if that's what people need to do to be safe and enjoy the outdoors, mask up. Um, I also just have another kind of in the same vein. Wallace asks, how can climate change anxiety be addressed with exposure to nature? That's really interesting. And as someone who works kind of in a climate space and is worried about climate change and what that means for our future, I spend a lot of time thinking about that outside. So maybe that's a nice levels me out a little bit. But I don't know if anyone has the insight into that. Please share.
I can start out, but I'm also really curious how our educators on the panel are addressing climate change with some of our younger students. One of the things we're doing at Wilderness Inquiry really in a lot of our programming is really trying to weave in climate messages to activities. One of the places that we've addressed it recently, we do an outdoor credit recovery program, which helps high school students recover academic credits that they're missing in order to graduate. And in the process of having these kids out in the 10-person canoes on the Mississippi River, the subject of climate change comes up an awful lot. And it is, I think Wallace said in the question, it is a source of extreme anxiety, and I'm not overstating that. Our youth are really very aware of climate change. They are seeing it and feeling it happen every single day. And so I think one of the biggest things we need to do right now, and we try to do in our programming, is really empower youth to take action, to do small things in their own lives that make change, that are, living out a more sustainable lifestyle. But it's also how to become political actors in their own spaces and have their voices heard in political environments, and help the adults in their world, their caring adults, understand how concerned they really are, because there's information really is power, and it's really important that our youth are really engaged in this issue, because they're going to be dealing with the consequences of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jodee, Nate, if you have any
Yeah, I
insight.
can jump in on there. I love everything that Erika had said there. It's basically everything that we've been doing the last couple of years. So just this past year, we read the book 2 Degrees by Alan Gratz, and I get this fly all over me. If you have not read it, it is amazing. And climate change is not my forte, but again, just putting myself out there and just learning along with the kids, researching, trying different things. If you haven't read 2 Degrees, highly recommend it. It's great for fifth and sixth grade. And then along those lines, there's 3 different stories that happen. There's one about a hurricane, one about wildfires, and then one about polar bears. And then they somehow intertwine towards the end, and how they can get other kids their age to be activists. So we read the book, and then our groups, what we had them do is we had them choose something that they could positively affect within our school and then within our community. And so we did some different things. We had them promote different ideas. They had to pitch it to different people. They had to present their ideas and how they would maybe do like red flag warnings and present that off to the younger kids and what that means. And then they'd bring their poster or their different flyers or whatever they created. And we're right in town, so we walked down, and then they would bring them to the state park and put up different flyers for the community members to be informed on red flag warnings and how to be safe with fires and just a variety of many different things. But yeah, that was the first. We just did that book this last year for the first time, and I learned alongside with the kids, and it was great. The kids loved it. They love having a voice, right? They want to be heard. They do care more than they let on. They do care about how it impacts them, and how it impacts their community. When they know that they're doing something that actually matters, outside of, is it a test or is it some homework? No, like you're putting this poster up and you're sending a video to the county commissioner, or you're sending us something to the mayor about how you can, support this project in the community. And when they feel like they have a voice, they'll do anything for you, which is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's that's so important to give kids a good outlet and a good direction. So thank you all. We have time for one more question here. I just want to get to this. We have talked a lot about kids, obviously incredibly important. But the data shows that this is good for everyone, right? Like the health benefits that we see are beneficial for all people. And Debbie asks, and it tells us here that her husband is in the early stages of dementia. They've always enjoyed tent camping, and they can't do that any longer. And they're just wondering, is there some way that any recommendations to get someone outside with some balance issues in nature safely? Any thoughts from anyone on the panel?
Well, I can start, but I'm also want to give space for Sarah if she's got some ideas too. Wilderness Inquiry actually has been bringing people of all abilities into the outdoors for close to half a century now. We started in 1978, bringing people with all sorts of different kinds of abilities into the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. Balance issues, my big secret on that, especially when we're guiding folks who are blind or have significant vision loss, big believer in hiking poles. People of all ages and abilities now are using hiking poles. One of the reasons is because of the rhythm that hiking poles help a person have when they're in the outdoors. And so the important thing is not to lean on them. They're used more as a steadying and stabilizing force, but that is like the biggest aha moment that we've had working here with folks who are a little bit unstable, is to grab those hiking poles. Don't use them like crutches, use them as sort of kind of rhythm makers and to help you feel your way, especially on uneven surfaces. And then go slow. That's the other big tip I have. Just slow down. Being in the outdoors, you're just going to get so much more just being present in the moment and just experiencing everything around you. And nobody needs to be in a hurry. So if you just slow down, I think that's another really great way to experience the outdoors if you're having a little bit of balance issues. I don't know, Sarah, do you have other ideas?
I don't. I love those though, Erica. It's great. I don't work with, this kind of not my population, but I am happy. I know a lot of people. I can probably find some great resources for you and get them sent on. However, we can get information onto folks, but happy to do that.
Yeah, send it to me, Sarah. I
Okay,
actually know Debbie, and I can be
great.
happy to follow
Perfect.
up. Well, thank you all so much. This was just really inspiring and wonderful. And I'm going to go outside after this, let me tell you. I'm not actually outside, but I'm going to go outside after this. Just want to thank you all so much, panel. I really appreciate it. And Jessica, if you mind taking it away.
Of course. All right, that is it for our program tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us, and a big thank you to Jodee and Nate Lund, Erika Rivers, and Sarah Stevens for sharing your expertise, and thank you, Avery, for moderating. Everyone deserves to be able to go outside, and Conservation Minnesota will continue to advocate for access to outdoor spaces so that all Minnesotans can reap the health benefits. You can learn more about our work by visiting conservationminnesota.org. And if you'd like to watch previous Tell Me More online events, you can visit our Conservation Minnesota YouTube channel. Thanks again and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, Jessica. Bye, everyone.